The Aguadolci Town Council to order. This is our March 9th meeting. This is the community portion of the meeting. And I believe we have a distinguished guest from iLead School that is going to be leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And I believe her name is Josephine Burdaugh. Is that correct? Josephine, are you with us tonight?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Background noise and just keep us moving right along. We have a 3-page agenda here tonight. We're going to try and get through it as quickly as possible. And now we have a word from Mary Johnson, I believe.
Yeah, I just want to do a little bit of a disclaimer here that due to miscommunication, the Town Council was recently made aware that Regional Planning and Department of Public Works were planning on making formal presentations at tonight's meetings to address many of the comments and questions that have been sent to them directly by local residents. The Council was unaware of that as we were shaping our agenda, and the Town Council sets the agenda, and based on the actions approved at our February meeting, for this March meeting, we agendized the Town Council having Town Council member Chris Udall report back on his review of historical documents, issues with concerned neighbors, and his continued research in options and determining the next steps to take. Having a detailed county presentation on a myriad of issues and providing a question and comment period, while it may be beneficial, we felt it was not going to be productive at this point in time. Because of that, we asked those agencies to stand down for their presentation. Once we've developed a clear set of concrete comments and questions to the various agencies, we may invite those agencies to attend a future meeting, or perhaps it may warrant a special town hall. After Chris's presentation and determination of the next steps, we'll circle back to see if the community thinks a formal presentation from the various county agencies is appropriate and what kind of meeting that should be.
Okay. Thank you, Mary. With that said, we're going to move on to the agency reports. And the first report we have tonight is California Highway Patrol, Officer Hallgren. I see you over there in the middle left corner there.
Yes, sir. How are you doing?
Good, great.
Good. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, you're great.
Excellent. Okay. So in the month of February, there was 105 citations written in your area, and that's up from about 86 from last month, which is good. There's a total of 7 arrests within the Aguadolci area. There was 5 total misdemeanor arrests. 2 were just warrants, and 3 were DUIs. There was 2 felony arrests. Excuse me, it's actually, I wrote it down wrong. It was 3 felony arrests, and it was 1 stolen vehicle that was recovered, and then the other 2 felony arrests were gun charges, and it was right on the corner of Aguadolci and Vasquez. One of our guys stopped a vehicle, and there was the driver, passenger, both were possessing a concealed weapon, handgun, and they were both arrested for that. So that was a good job there. As far as collisions go, I wasn't able to pull the collisions. I'll get you the collisions. I'll email Mary. I'm going to shoot you a text on the collisions. I just, for whatever reason, the computer wouldn't pull it up. So you have the citations, you have the arrest. As far as special events, have you guys noticed that big like motorhome trailer on Sierra Highway?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to miss there.
Yes. So, are you guys aware of this? That like it looks like a broken down house, basically. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So, our office was made aware of this. What they're calling a trailer. So, our office, one of our officers put a parking citation on it, and that requires the vehicle or trailer to be moved within 72 hours. Once that 72 hours was expired, they sent out 2 separate tow companies. And when we use our tow companies, they're heavy duty, specialized tow companies, and they couldn't do a thing with it, unfortunately. But So what they're going to do is we actually have a representative for the highway patrol that's a liaison between the movie details and the events that we work with them. And we're going to give them an ultimatum. Either they come and pick it up, or we're going to destroy it and then basically dispose of it, and they'll have to pay for it. So we are currently working on that trailer.
Okay.
We want to get ready to move into it.
Okay. That's awesome. Well, you're on top of it, so that's good. So it's just a matter of time while it takes its course as to who's going to do what, it sounds like.
Yeah, it's all logistics, but it'll go away soon.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Yes,
Anybody
sir.
else have any questions that are important to ask Officer Holmgren? If not, thank you very much for attending tonight. We appreciate the report. Look forward to getting the collisions report.
Yes, sir.
Next up, we have Los Angeles County Sheriff's Resident Deputy Martinez.
Good evening, Don. So that motorhome, the real story is their tow company broke some of it, and then we tried to tow it, and we broke it even more. So now it's that's why it looks like it's two pieces broken down. So we've been trying to break it down as well, and not working. The tow they brought in there was one of the biggest tows I've ever seen that the CHP brought in there, and that didn't do anything to it. Which was pretty incredible.
Do we know where it came from?
Yes, it is from a movie production that ended at the winery. The production company gave us information on who they rented it from. The person that rented it, as they were turning out of Sierra Highway, broke down. They were given ample time to move it, and they haven't. And our trap is naming them basically as illegal dump kind of thing.
So you're on top of it. That's great. That's all we care about.
VIN modification because the VIN's all grinded off on the ton.
Yeah.
Of the trailer.
Wow.
All right. So for the month of February, we had 111 calls in Aguadolci.
Okay.
Of those 111, only 3 were of the location that you guys were concerned about. So that's a vast improvement.
Right.
We had 0 Part 1 crimes, 7 reports total, 1 burglary, 1 grand theft, 1 party, vandalism, a missing person, a suicide, and a recovered stolen vehicle.
Okay.
That's pretty much all that we have, and that's it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that report. Does anybody have any pressing questions for?
So I know when the CAC meeting was held in January in Acton, there was significant interest in how OHV and off-road issues are handled. So this is their opportunity to make a comment and hopefully ensure the grant for this year so that we can get patrols out here.
Wonderful. Okay, great. Does anybody have any questions for Marcy? If not, thank you very much, Marcy. Appreciate you being here tonight and appreciate the report. Okay, next up, we have Los Angeles County Fire Department, the Community Service Representative, Maria Greichen. Maria?
Good evening, everybody. February was a pretty quiet month for Aguadolci. We had a total of 26 responses, 2 fires. They were both vehicle fires, both of them on the 14 freeway. We had 15 medical calls. I know that, from month to month, traffic collisions can vary between what the CHP shows and what the fire department shows because we don't always respond to every one of them unless we're needed and vice versa. But I can tell you that fire responded to 3 traffic collisions in Aguadolci in February.
Okay.
And we had 9 good intent calls, and that's it. And you'll notice I've started putting a safety tip of the month at the bottom of our reports. So this month's safety tip is all about cooking and being careful when you're cooking. So everybody can read the tips there. But basically, it's never leave food cooking unattended in your kitchen. If you happen to have a grease fire, do not use water to put it out. Either put the lid on the stove or put baking soda on it or a fire extinguisher, but never use water. And if you're wearing long sleeves when you're cooking, just kind of, either roll them up or push them up your elbow so that there's nothing flowing near burners. So we see that sometimes people catch fire from cooking with long sleeves. And that's about it. So we just kind of want to provide a safety tip every month.
No, that's wonderful. We appreciate that. Anybody have any questions for Maria? If not, thank you very much for coming to our meeting tonight. We appreciate the report. Glad the numbers are staying somewhat controlled. Next up, we have the Acton Aguadolci Library report from librarian Jim Wall.
Good evening. Hope everyone's doing well tonight. I've got a handful of updates for you guys, so I'll try and make it quick. First one, just some library closures. The library will be closed tomorrow for staff development. And then the library will also be closed on March 28th for Cesar Chavez Day. And then on March 18th, we are having a COVID vaccine clinic. So you can come by and if you're interested, you can come by and get your shot or a booster or whatever you would want. That's from 1 to 3 o'clock on March 18th. For the next few days, too, we still have the PCR tests available out front of the library. I'm not sure how much longer they're going to be there, but I don't think it's going to be too many more days. So if that's something you're also interested, come by sooner rather than later to pick up that kit and get it turned in. Or if you picked one up and not dropped it off yet, the time to drop it off is coming up quickly. Story time. We are actually starting up in-person, slowly starting up in-person programming at the library. So we are starting off with a story time. It's going to be Wednesday mornings in April at 10:30 in the morning, starting Wednesday, April 6th. Sign-ups are required. You sign up on our website, and you get registered for it, and you can come on by for that. And lastly, big news on that would be starting Monday, we will have a new set of open hours at the library. We'll be expanding our hours. We will be open Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. and then Friday and Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. So a lot more open availability there, a lot more access to your library.
Great. Wonderful.
So that's all I've got unless anyone's got questions for me.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Jim? If not, thank you again for joining our meeting tonight and giving us the update and the report. And I'm glad the library is working toward getting full open again.
Yeah, we're getting there.
All right. Well, we'll see you in a month. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up, we have 5th District report from Stephanie English.
Hey everybody, good evening. Just really quick, 2 big ticket items. The supervisor supported the governor's efforts to provide more meaningful treatment to homeless individuals who are suffering from mental illness and drug addiction. Her statement was, I commend Governor Newsom's efforts to bring healing to the indigent individuals living with debilitating mental illness on our streets. We need a coordinated and consistent approach to help those individuals, and Care Court is poised to deliver that through the court system. Certainly the onus of providing comprehensive treatment will fall on the county's shoulders, and this will require an investment in resources and infrastructure. And she is looking forward to working through those details. As she says, that what's crystal clear now is that severe mental illness doesn't resolve itself. Until we take a firm approach, the homeless crisis will continue to grow. She has been working tirelessly for state changes in the mental health laws that will, as I've said before, advance the definition of gravely ill so that we can provide pathways to providing more humane services to those vulnerable populations. You hear a lot about housing. Housing is not really the problem. The problem is that we need to be able to help those people who can't help themselves. They can't live in housing with mental illness any more than they can, be forced into treatment for mental illness. And the background on this effort with the governor of community assistance, recovery and empowerment is a court plan with a framework of aiming to provide individuals with mental health and substance abuse disorders care and medical services. At this point, the governor has to wait for approval from the legislature. It would require counties to provide treatment to the most severely impaired and those who are untreated, and hold patients accountable to treatment. We're not sure what that looks like. The proposal offers court-ordered interventions, stabilization, medication, advanced mental health directives, and housing ranging from 12 to 24 months. So that is a huge step in the right direction in our homeless crisis. And then secondly and last, the board issued a 5-signature letter in response to the Russian aggression in Ukraine. The letter went to the Russian ambassador to the U.S., relaying the county's position on the aggression and urging the Russian government to commence peace talks with the Ukrainian government in order to prevent any more deaths of civilians. It also included a letter to President Biden asking the president to provide temporary protected status or deferred enforcement, departure, any enforcement of departure of Ukrainian nationals, and especially for family members of American citizens or permanent residents of Ukraine, to allow them to relocate to the United States. In addition, the letter asked the president to provide additional funding to the 9 nonprofit groups tasked by the U.S. State Department with resettling refugees in the United States. The county does stand ready to work in collaboration with the federal government in helping refugees. So those are obviously 2 big ticket items within the world and within LA County that the board is weighing in on. And I think that's really all I have for tonight.
Okay, great. Does anybody have any pertinent questions to ask Stephanie? If not, Stephanie, we appreciate you coming to our meeting. Look forward to speaking to you in the future.
Don, Susan Turner's got her hand raised.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, hey.
That's not going to work. Okay. Susan, there's quite a bit of feedback coming out of your microphone now.
How's that? Better?
Perfect.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, go ahead. How's that? A little bit better?
Yes, that's a little better.
I'm out of town, sorry. Thank you, Stephanie, for that. My first question is for the homeless. After Nixon had closed all the mental hospitals back in 2013, they're still there. We do a lot of filming at those hospitals in the entertainment industry. I don't see why we can't maybe make a suggestion that we re-act those hospitals and help the homeless, that they can get mental health the way they need to. Is that anything that anybody's ever considered doing?
Well, it's about funding, so less about location, although that's always an important factor, and more about funding, 1, and then 2, more about how we can legally help people. Because right now, it's very, very difficult, the 5150 laws, or the just the regular Latterman Short Act from 1964 does not allow us to really take people off the street to force them into treatment for their own benefit. So that's the hard part.
I would suggest reaching out to the entertainment industry, because I'm recently on a show where we've taken quite a few homeless people and given them jobs, and now they're all getting into the union. So the entertainment industry might be interested in helping the homeless. And I know we have one group that goes out and collects foods off of the sets and distributes food to the homeless after each end of work day, and they got a license to do that. And there's, it's just, we in the entertainment industry are so interested in helping the homeless, but I don't think you guys reach out to the unions. It's just food for thought. Just wanted to put it on the plate.
Appreciate that.
That's it.
Thank you, Susan. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
If there's nothing else, then we're going to move on to the 38th Assembly District. Assembly Member Suzette Martinez Valadares, who is represented tonight by Patsy Ayala.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me on behalf of our Assemblywoman. Susan, now that you're mentioning about the homeless, the first thing that I want to mention is our Assemblywoman is asking the governor to declare a statewide emergency on homelessness, laying out solutions for facilities and for opportunities to serve better our homeless. But the first thing is that we need the governor to accept this is a problem, not a simple problem, a big problem enough to declare a statewide emergency. And that way, as Stephen English was saying, to get funding to try to put the hands on it more aggressively with this situation. On other thing, one of the other biggest things that is happening in Sacramento with an effort of our Assemblywoman is helping to lead to get more funds appropriated to help offset the cost of business associated with California's unemployment insurance debt owed to the federal government. The governor's budget allocates a few billion to pay down the debt, which is better than nothing, but also not nearly enough. The Assemblywoman would like to see immediate relief for small businesses that are going to face a tax hike if more resources aren't devoted. She's advocating up to get payroll tax credit for small businesses to offset this future tax increase. She also co-authored a bipartisan bill that would divest CalPERS and other state agencies from Russian assets. The bill would also encourage California businesses to do the same. The bill also restricts state agencies from awarding public contracts to companies that do business with the Russian government. And the bill will be heard in the Senate later in this year. I'll keep you posted. From some of her bills, also AB 2450, that is the wildfire insurance deductible. This permits insurance providers to offer lower premiums to those in high wildfire risk areas if they accept a higher deductible. And this will be heard in the Assembly Committee on Insurance. And there are a lot of bills that also she has been involved in studying. Is there anything in particular that you would like us to address for the following months? Just send me an email and 1 email away so I can bring you the things that are of interest for the Aguadolci community. And one event that we have that I would like to invite everybody. One of the biggest threats that we have, not only because of the situation in Russia, but also that we have been living through the pandemic, the cyber frauds. So given the importance for our constituents to help you, we are going to be hosting a cyber fraud and other scams events on March 25th at 9 a.m. It's going to be a Zoom webinar, 1 hour, with people with cyber security specialists from the state of California. I sent the flyer to you, Mary. I just sent it at the beginning of the meeting, but I'm going to share my information on the chat in case somebody else, somebody would like to RSVP, so we can send you the Zoom link. And that's all that I have for the moment.
Well, thank you very much, Patsy. That was a very detailed report, and we appreciate you joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up, we have Senate District Senator Scott Wilkes, Representative Brandon Roque. Brandon, are you? Is Brandon with us tonight?
I don't see him as a participant.
Okay. All right. Well, if he shows up, we'll come back to him. We're concerned a little bit about the SB 55, what the status of it is, being that it's going to affect our area, which is classified as a very high fire hazard severity zone. Next up, we have the 25th Congressional District, Mike Garcia. His representative is Jackie Owens. If Jackie's with us tonight, we'd love to hear from her.
Hey, good evening, everyone. So, I want to start out with great news, and I'll make myself available for any questions. Mary, I think you've probably been getting the press releases I'm sending over. So with that, if there's anything from there I can comment on, I'd be glad to do it. But one of the things, as you may know, Congressman Garcia sits on the Appropriations Committee. And so with that, he's been able to get some pretty significant funding for our region. So very briefly, I'll just go over a couple of significant funding, appropriation fundings that was coming our way. He was able to get $3 million from Metrolink for the AV lines rehabilitation. And I think it's timely, as we all know, as people are questioning how they're going to get to work putting gas in their tank. This might be a more viable option depending on how long we go with these higher gas prices. So with that rehabilitation, that would improve the safety and, of course, the operations and the speed and the effectiveness of getting commuters down to the lower parts of LA. So that was a great one. For Santa Clarita Valley, he was able to get $1.5 million for circulation and safety improvements. And this is for city roadways, the city roadway network known as choke points that exist to create significant traffic congestion. So this will be some funding that'll help loosen that up. Another one that we're really, really excited about is he was able to get $1.2 million for the City of Hope Comprehensive Cancer Center. And what those funds are going to do is be able to provide a mobile van for cancer screening units to be able to really help some of our underserved community and also our veteran community. As you know, a lot of our veterans have to go down to West LA to get their different treatments. With the use of this van, we'll be able to have some of those services right here, and it'll be able to go out to some of the more rural areas in our high desert area. So they are thrilled about that at Sydney. And that would be, right now, to the best of my knowledge, that's going to be the only type of mobile vehicle that they have. They, of course, have the blood mobile, but this will be specifically state-of-the-art mobile for cancer screening. And that's going to be for our AV region. Let's see. Just want to make sure. There's other areas, but it doesn't necessarily apply to this part of our district. He was able to get $610,000 from Mayo, for Henry Mayo Hospital, for the Breast Help Equipment Initiative. And I know that there's a lot of other funding here, but it doesn't necessarily apply for the northern part of our district. The other one that applies to us as far as just really our aerospace, he was able to get additional funding for SOFIA. I think you probably are all familiar with the NASA project, the it's this acronym for Stratospheric Observatory Infrared Astronomy, and does a lot of really exciting things for not only our research, but also study storms. And then there's a really neat component with NASA and teachers, that teachers can apply for a scholarship and actually go on board and be there for 2 days and learn from this and go back to the classroom and really inspire our young people. So I am going to stop there. There's a whole lot in this appropriations bill, but again, I just wanted to bring some of the highlights that were going to impact our area in the high desert.
Well, great, Jackie. We appreciate that. Does anybody have any pressing questions for Jackie tonight? I see Susan's hand is still up, or is it just been up? Okay, now it's down. Okay, so Jackie, we appreciate you coming to our meeting tonight, and we appreciate the updates. Look forward to hearing more from Mike and all he's doing back in Washington. We appreciate you representing us.
You are welcome, sir. Thank you for all you do.
Oh, thank you. Next up, we have the Santa Clara River Watershed Area Steering Committee, Measure W. Peter Massey, I believe, is going to give a report or presentation, if I'm not mistaken. Peter, are you there? You are? Great.
I am here. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
And thank you. We've identified a kind of a unique funding source from the state of California that has the potential to support domestic well owners that are affected by the ongoing drought, and also through the and also working through a program called Water Talks as well. That some of you may have participated in some of the surveys for that last year. Significant amount of time. And then whatever we're working on, we'd have a few years to complete the projects. So we'd love to hear back from everybody. And if you've got any questions or want to reach out with anything, I can drop my email in the chat, and we can put the link in the chat for the survey.
Okay, great.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
You bet.
Okay. Any questions for Peter? If not, Peter, we appreciate you showing up tonight and giving us that information. Look forward to working with you on this for in the future.
You bet.
Thank you. Next up, we have, looks like, the Graffiti Abatement Program. Presentation is going to be given by LA County Department of Public Works.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I am here on behalf of Public Works, Graffiti Abatement. I know the agenda says Arian DeCellis, but she was unable to make it tonight. Okay. My name is Fessy Aguilera, and again, I'm with Graffiti Abatement, and we are basically responsible for removing graffiti throughout Los Angeles unincorporated communities and in the flood control channels. It's very easy to report. We have an 800 number that is available 24/7, or you can also report it on the Works app. It's called the Works, and you could download the app on any smartphone.
Okay.
We remove over 100,000 graffiti markings throughout LA County in the communities, plus the channels. And we have a contract monitor that is responsible for your area. His name is Adrian. Adrian, can you say hello?
Hello, this is Adrian Castellanos.
And Adrian is the one who monitors your area, and he can share his email and his cell phone number if anyone has any questions on a certain area, or they just want to report graffiti, they can contact him.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, great. Well, we appreciate you both being here tonight.
Thank you so much.
Look forward to working with you in the future. It looks like we've got some numbers that are coming up on the page there, and if someone needs to get a hold of you, they can go to those websites.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for letting us present.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Chris Udall, who's going to give us a report back on what has been discovered since our last meeting. So, Chris, I'm going to just turn this over to you, and you take it from there.
Hi there, Mary. I was wondering if you could let me share my screen so I can put the presentation up for everyone to see.
Does that work for you?
I believe it does.
Okay. Yep, my screen, there we go. Perfect.
Excellent. So as Don mentioned last month at the town council meeting, really based on the amount of feedback that the council has received to the presentation that was undertaken in November last year by RTG Investments over the Aguadolci residential project, we put together an outreach to talk to various people who had these concerns. And I want to begin by thanking everybody who reached out and walked me through this. I've been on the Aguadolci Town Council about 10 minutes, and a lot of these documents went back to the early 1990s. So it's very helpful to really zone in on the issues that are of importance. I'd like to thank Mary Johnson, because she also went back into some of the council's records from 2007 and beyond. And also to the LA County agencies. I don't know whether they're here or not, but thank you. I did have occasion to ask for a couple of copies of documents. They acknowledged I sent the request. Unfortunately, they didn't actually send me the documents yet. So what I want to try and do is really give you a sense of what we're going to talk about. The first thing I'd like to do is give you a sense of the buckets that these different issues fall into. Then we've got, I think, something like 90 people on the call. Most of us aren't experts in planning and regional planning and land use, so I want to give you a sense of what some of these different documents that were created along the way actually mean. Then actually go through some of the milestones that this project has gone through from 1992 to date. That's 30 years. And then really hone in on the areas of concern that have been identified. And then at the end of it all, I hope we can pop out some action items that the council can actually respond to. The first thing I really want to do is, I forget which member of the community actually said this to me, but they likened this project. They said it's like watching a train wreck that's about to happen. The train shouldn't have left the station, and the locals know that there's a problem on the track a little further down the line that's going to derail the train in the middle of their town. And the locals are getting 3 minutes each to frantically wave at the train from the side of the track to try and get it to stop, while the developer's train driver, along with the passengers from the local agencies in the carriages, wave back from the comfort of their seats as if nothing's wrong. Nice day, hello, weather's nice here. So that really is the level of frustration that I think a lot of the members in the community have got. They understand that there are critical issues here, but they don't feel that the agencies are actually responsive and listening to them. And those issues fall into the following categories. There's certainly some question over the validity of what the developer is alleging they have as a wastewater entitlement. There's a lack of completeness in the documentation that was referenced in the various documents over time, and we'll talk about the detail of those. There's a question about water and whether District 37 actually has a guarantee to supply rights to phase 2 of the project. And then based on the testimony of the developer at a recent water board meeting, there's a clear question about what the developer intent is. And then due to some of these geopolitical issues, particularly in Russia, there are some questions about the ongoing funding of the development. So let's try and do Planning 101. And most of us here in the community, when we're adding a garage or a porch or a swimming pool, we have a relatively straightforward process when we're applying to the county for permits to do that. When you want to put 300 homes on 900 acres and create a subdivision, you actually have to go through quite a rigorous process. And that begins with what's called an environmental impact report. And essentially, this becomes an understanding between the developer, the local agencies like regional planning, public works, and the community about the degree to which this project is going to impact the area and what can be done to mitigate the impacts that are created as part of doing this development. And through the process of the environmental impact report, the developer gets some entitlements, and this is things like the ability to take a field and partition it off into lots which they can build houses on, where the sidewalks and roadways are going to go, where the utilities are going to go, water storage tanks, sewers, that sort of thing. So those are entitlements, and those are expressed in the environmental impact report. And this is all done within the framework of a law called the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. And that means that when the developer decides to publish this project, they have to look at a whole series of angles about how this project can impact the community. We'll talk more about that shortly. So the lead agency, in this case, the Department of Regional Planning of LA County, publishes a draft of this document and then sends that out to a whole range of people, Public Works, the various agencies, fire department, the local councils, and even the local citizens. It's published in libraries, and then everybody has a chance to comment. The CEQA, I think a lot of people, when they hear about an environmental report, they think about plants, wildlife, but CEQA is actually quite significant in its scope, and it also considers things like traffic, population and housing, how this fits into the local area plan, whether there's sufficient law enforcement resources, fire protection, education, are there enough people are there enough available seats in schools to support the additional housing. So it's a very far-reaching set of considerations that have to be considered. And after all this public and agency outreach has been completed and the comment period has ended, then the lead agency and the developer publish a final draft of the environmental impact report. And that basically says, here's all the issues that we've identified, what we're going to try and do to mitigate them. There are some which potentially can't be mitigated. There's one in the case of this project, which is the dust that's created during the grading of such a significant area of land. There's an option to have a statement of overriding consideration. So if there's an issue or two that can't be resolved and mitigated to the fullest extent, then the local agency has the right to play what I call the greater good card. And they can say, look, the overall benefit to the community outweighs this particular issue that can't be resolved. The agencies in that final environmental impact report will list which agencies are responsible for issuing the permits that conform to these conditions, are responsible for making sure that those conditions are being followed as the developer creates the project. At the same time, this impact report has a vesting tract map. This is a map of the area that's going to be developed, and a conditional use permit that says, here's all the conditions that are reflected from all this research that's been done that you must observe while you're delivering this project. And at the end of all that, the lead agency staff, the regional planning staff, make a recommendation to the Planning Commission, and the final impact report gets approved. Now, there is a concept of finality when these reports are approved. They're done under this law called CEQA, and you have, if you don't agree with the conclusions that have been driven and derived from the report, you actually have the opportunity to appeal them under CEQA. But the window for doing that is very short. And clearly, some of these documents were done in 1994. Other documents were done in 2007. So it's very difficult now to go back and challenge the conclusions that were drawn, even though in the context of 2022 and things like environmental change, global warming, they're somewhat outdated. Now, sometimes after this process of getting to a final report has been completed, and that's the case with this project, there are conditions that change, and there can be a situation where those changes are significant enough that a supplemental environmental impact report is created. In this case, it's the wastewater treatment plant, and we'll talk about that shortly. And it follows the same, it identifies just those areas of the project which are changing. It goes through exactly the same review process as you have in an environmental impact report. And out of the end of it pops a plan, a conditional use permit, and a recommendation. And, it has the same option of being challenged if there isn't an agreement with the findings that were found. So let's just talk about the last bit of this, which is a tract map. So what the developer will do is they'll put together a very detailed survey map of the area they're going to develop, and that is attached to these environmental reports when they're approved, and that becomes then a document that they can go to the county recorder's office with and record the field and how it then gets divided into lots, each with their own parcel number that you can go and build a house on and roads on, etc. And once that recording happens with the recorder's office, it's considered a final map. These maps have an expiration date. So when you create a map and it's approved by the Planning Commission, you get 2 years to go out and do what you've said you're going to do. And you can go back to the county and get another 2 years at the county's discretion. If some issue arises that is unanticipated, the county can actually create a moratorium, which is a stay on that time clock if they want. And in cases like this one, where there is significant investment outside of the project, particularly bringing municipal water into the site from, in this case, Red Rover and Escondido or Sierra Highway, then there's a state level law called Title 7, which allows these tentative tract maps to be extended for 10 years. So there's typically a 14-year window when things have got to happen. In response to the pandemic, the legislator passed the bill in September of 2020 called AB 1561. And that basically said that if there's any tract maps that are expiring between 2020 and December 31st of 2021, then those tract maps will have 18 months added to their expiration date. And once one of these best expires, i.e. it doesn't get recorded with the recorder's office, then the conditional use permit that allows the developer to exercise all these entitlements they've got for that particular piece of land, those expire, and the developer has to go back to square one and go through the whole EIR and approval process afresh. In the course of the next few slides, you can go and just put this website into the comments section. It would be great. But all the documents that I'm going to refer to, bar one, are actually available for public consumption on the LA County Planning website. So you can go and trust but verify, which ironically is actually a Russian proverb. So let's talk about the location. The location is actually sort of sandwiched between Sierra Highway up by Shady Lane, just as it heads up towards Boiling Point. And as you can see from this map, it's bounded on the south by the 14 freeway down by Valley Sage Road. And it's right on the easterly edge of Aguadolci, right on the border with Acton. So, to coin a phrase from the Talking Heads in their once-in-a-lifetime song from the early 80s, you may find yourself asking, how did we get here? And this is how. The project was approved initially in 1994, and it was a project that described construction of 339 homes on 2-acre lots with an internal network of private streets over 908 acres across 12 separate construction phases. There's some open spaces in there. The strange-looking prong at the top of that green map I showed you is actually a street called H Street, which is going to connect the project to Sierra Highway. The main entrance, that's actually a gated entrance according to the EIR, and the main entrance is actually on Valley Sage Road down by 14. That approval said that they could construct the first 3 phases of 68 homes with septic systems in those homes. And the Regional Water Quality Control Board issued a permit, number 91-94, for that in 1992. However, there's a restriction, and it says that the developer can't build the 4 through 12 phases of this project. No building permits get issued until they made a connection to the Rio Dulce wastewater treatment plant. Now, Rio Dulce was a separate development project that was located about 2.5 miles to the southwest of the project that we're talking about here. And very key, and you see this throughout the environmental documents, not just in 1994, but 2007, the county was very focused on there being a waste treatment plant here because they were very concerned that 339 homes would just overload the local groundwater system with water that was coming out of septic systems. I mean, the septic system flow that was in these environmental documents suggests about 66.5 million gallons of water a year would go through the wastewater treatment plant back into irrigation from the effluent that these homes would produce. So in 1994, the result of this EIR was that you got this. You got the project site on the lower right, which is called Phase 1, and you got the project site on the left, which is called Phase 2. But essentially, this is still all one project. After 1994, this happened. The Aguadolci project didn't go forward, and therefore the developers had to come up with a solution about what to do about the wastewater treatment plant. The original developers, a guy called Louis Pratty, of the Pratty Road fame, he actually sold the development to a company called B&C Land, which was a couple of guys, Fred Brown and Nicholas Kasoulis, and you'll often hear this referred to as the Kasoulis project from the mid-2000s. So the first phase of the project was actually recorded at the Recorder's Office in May 15th, 2002, and that was after the developer made some lot line adjustments to conform to the Aguadolci Community Standards District. The expiration of the tentative tract map was of the remainder of the project was actually extended until April 2007 because of these sewage disposal issues that arose when the project at Aguadolci didn't go forward. In addition to connecting this project to the Aguadolci wastewater treatment plant, the county also wanted the homeowners at Sierra Colony to connect to this wastewater treatment plant because that was part of the agreement documents that were made when Sierra Colony was developed. They had Adtc as well. So the developer at B&C Land, they went back to the drawing board. It's still a single project, but they made a lot of changes to Phase 2, and they effectively removed 24 homes so that they could build an on-site wastewater treatment plant. They also described in various presentations to the council and to the regional planning, to Public Works, this conceptual membrane bioreactor reverse osmosis water treatment system, which was going to be built on site to treat all the wastewater, the effluent that comes out of people's houses. And that was then going to be stored in one of these two water tanks and used to irrigate the land around the area. And very, very importantly, what you see in this 2007 Supplemental Environmental Impact Report, and it says this very clearly in the documents, and I'll cover this shortly, is that wastewater treatment plant is going to be used instead of the septic systems that were going to be installed and the off-site wastewater plant. And the construction of the wastewater treatment plant, because it was going to service the first phase of homes, was going to begin at the same time as the Phase 1 homes were going to be constructed so they can be connected together. So that's what the 2007 SEIR produced. That red square in the top left corner of Phase 2 of the map is the location of the wastewater treatment plant, or the proposed location of it. What happened after the 2007 approval? Well, B&C Land applied to the Water Quality Control Board in 2012 to have the septic permit terminated because they didn't need it, and that was terminated in April 2012. And then in 2019, B&C Land sold the project to RTG Investment, which is the current owner, Mr. Gregorian. The Los Angeles County Department of Public Health assumed responsibility of issuing septic system permits, as we all know, in around about 2018 under the Local Area Management Plan. That was a standing room only presentation at the Acton Library for whoever remembers that. A stream bed alteration permit has been granted to the current owner. That was issued by the Department of Fish and Game in September last year. And last month, the Regional Water Quality Control Board approved a water discharge requirements water quality order allowing some grading to a small portion of the land to be completed, which is where stream beds, which are effectively only present when it's raining, but they needed permits to grade that. So before I get into the the crux of some of these issues, I really want to go through some of the members, some people here, I recognize the names on the list of people on the call, attended this, but there was a Regional Water Quality Control Board meeting on February 10th. It was the day after the last Aguadolci Council meeting. And Mary, if you can share that web address into the comments section, it's great, because that's got the video and a transcript of what was said in it. Prior to that, various people in the community had actually participated in a Zoom call with Regional Water Quality Control Board staff in January, and many members of the community attended this February 10th board meeting and actually made their public comments. And at the meeting, there was also representatives of the developer who answered various questions under oath, which were asked of them by the board members. And I think when you have the chance to listen to this, you'll see as you get towards the end of the discussion, the board members were quite conflicted as to whether they should approve this or whether they should delay their approval pending further review by the Regional Water Quality Board staff. But ultimately, they approved the permit. Now, what I want to do is just cover off some of the questions that were asked there, because it gives a lot of insight as to what the potential intent of the developer is. Around about 2 hours and 28 minutes into that video, David Nahai, one of the board members, asked, so where is this water supply coming from? And Mr. Chadwick, who's the outside counsel representative for the developer, essentially said, we've already got a water commitment for the project from District 37, and that's going to come in. That's the municipal water supply. Then Mr. Nahai asked him, look, is that the water for the entire project, or is that only phase one? And he said, well, actually, it's only phase one. It's the 68 homes that we're talking about. So the grading permit, this dredge and fill permit that the developer was seeking from the Regional Water Quality Control Board, was only for phase one. It doesn't apply to that phase two of the project, which hasn't been recorded yet. Mr. Nahai then asked a question about the wastewater plant. He basically said, look, this is quite a fundamental thing. People have their needs, and where's all this stuff going to go? And Mr. Chadwick then replied, excuse me, I'm just going to have to go to my notes here because I've got some parts of my screen covered here. But he basically said, look, the wastewater treatment plant was proposed as part of the 2007 SEIR. That's really not part of what we're discussing today. It's a whole separate project, needs a whole set of separate permitting, and the environmental impact report from 1994 states that the three phases, or this phase one of the development, can be built using individual septic tanks. And he went out of his way to note that, for the benefit of everybody from the community who was on the call and had commented on this, that the regional, this wastewater treatment plant was really not for discussion at this particular meeting, because it hadn't been applied for as part of this approval. David Nahai then asked a follow-on question. He said, look, in terms of the entitlements you've got, could you give us some detail about this? There's some that you're talking about today, and something that's going to be needed to be covered by another permit, i.e. the wastewater plant. And Mr. Chadwick's reply basically said, look, these 68 homes in this first phase are completely independent. The permitting for that is pretty much done. And, we as a builder, as a developer, don't want to apply for these permits for phase two because they're expensive. And we have a lot of planning to do before we can make that application. Then Mr. Nahai asked, well, when do you think you're going to know what you're going to do for the entire picture of this project? And the developer said, well, look, once we get this permit from the Water Quality Control Board, we can go off to the county and we can get the grading permits, and we can get the septic permits. But as far as the wastewater treatment plant goes, I don't know when this permit's going to be submitted to the board for consideration, because we've got an awful lot of things to do. It's a much bigger process, and it's going to require a lot more analysis and things. And that's under oath coming from the developer. Then Mr. Nahai said, okay, fine. So as I understand it, it's basically a project where there's initially going to be septic tanks and then some treatment plant somewhere down the line. And Mr. Chadwick confirmed that that was exactly the correct understanding. Subsequently, Mr. Nahai opined in public. He said, look, I've listened to the lawyer, Mr. Chadwick, very carefully, and there's some parts of the future of this project related to the wastewater treatment plant that I find quite troubling, and I'd really like to see more clarity on that. So when you look at this video, you'll see a dialogue between the various members of the board deciding what they really wanted to do and taking the advice of the staff of the Water Quality Control Board. Then about 2 hours and 57 minutes into it, Mr. Chadwick stuck his hand up and volunteered this information. And he basically said, look, as far as we're concerned, as a developer, we could just let the tract map of phase 2 expire. We don't have to go and record it. And at that point, we could just abandon it if the developer wanted to. And he disagreed that there needed to be a conclusive plan for the phase 2 of the project in order for the Water Quality Control Board to issue this particular permit. And then he went on to explain how we should all assume that the 1994 EIR and the 2007 supplemental EIR fully comply with CEQA and are absolutely the right documents for the basis of decisions for this project. And I don't think anybody in the community disagrees with him. So let's outline some of these entitlements. One of the things I heard when I listened to that video from the Water Quality Control Board is their staff saying, look, we've looked at the documents that LA County has given us and the developer has given us for these environmental impact reports. What I've actually had to do with these documents, and they are somewhere in the region of 100 plus pages, is I've read them, and I've read them front to back, so that, again, I could trust the information that I was being given from the community and then verify that it was actually consistent with what's in these documents. And the single issue that I think the community has is this wastewater entitlement that's described in the 2000 SEIR across the entire project no longer allows phase 1 to be built with septic systems. Based on the testimony that you heard at that Regional Water Quality Control Board meeting, that's clearly what the developer's planning to do. Now, to give you a sense of where the community is coming from, I was given a series of references to these documents. In the notice of preparation for the 2007 Supplemental Environmental Impact Report on page 2, you don't have to read too far to read this. It says, what we're going to do is we are going to, the revision to this project entails providing an on-site water reclamation facility instead of the previously planned septic systems for the residential lots. In the report to the Planning Commission, recommending that the Planning Commission adopt this SEIR in 2007, page 1. We don't even have to read that far into the document now. There's a paragraph down that says water reclamation systems. And it says an on-site water reclamation system facility in lieu of the previously planned septic systems. I spent 8 years learning French when I was a kid in school in England. I've recovered now, but I can tell you that in lieu of means in place of. So it's very clear from these two documents that that's the developer's intent. Then when you go to the final bound copy of the supplemental impact reports, and I think it's about 6 pages in, there's a section called grading and construction. And the dialogue there is very simple. It says, look, what we're going to do is we could build phase 1 right now, but because this water treatment plant is now proposed, this EIR assumes that the water treatment plant is going to be constructed at the same time. This phase 1 is going to be constructed at the same time as phase 2. And I think the commitment is that once they've got 50 homes built, they can put it on the wastewater treatment plant. Now, the council has its own record of these conversations, and this one is very, very clear what the developer was going to do. A gentleman called Dennis Bouchard came before the Aguadolci Town Council in April of 2007. That video recording was made of that meeting, as was the case at the time. And his pitch to the council and the community to elicit the level of support that the council subsequently gave was very clear. he said, look, we could go and build 68 homes without the wastewater treatment plant. And this was before the SEIR that effectively replaced the septics was even approved. But we don't want to do that. We'd rather not go with septics. We think that the collection system is the right way to do it, and that's the way to deal with the effluent. So we delayed construction on the 68 lots in phase one to get the wastewater treatment plant approved. We'll build it ahead of time, and when we start the first 68 lots, we'll pump it over the saddle and gravity feed to the treatment plant. So we're not going to have any septics on this project whatsoever. Let's be very clear on that. So I've highlighted it in red, because the developer's intent, as it was expressed to the council and the community, is exactly what's reflected in the 2007 SEIR. So the intent to construct phase one without septics is clear and unambiguous. And even though the supplemental, it didn't change the tract map. It didn't change where the subdivisions were going to be made, the houses were going to be built, the roads were going to be built. What it did was it changed the entitlement from one of having a septic system on phase one and a wastewater treatment plant for phase two to a wastewater treatment plant for everything. And what the developer then did in 2012, as we mentioned earlier, is they went to the Regional Water Quality Control Board and they terminated the wastewater permit. So at the point at which the developer goes to Los Angeles County Department of Public Health and said, I'd like a septic permit, there appears to be no authority under which the county could actually issue those septic permits because there's no longer an entitlement to do so. I want to take a moment just to go through this information. So I actually went to Aguadolci's equivalent of Dallas Rains, a gentleman called Ellis Hertz. And you remember Ellis would put information in the Country Journal every week about weather conditions, low temperatures, high temperatures, rainfall. And I asked Ellis if he could give me information about the average annual rainfall for Aguadolci. This is from his weather station, which is a pretty decent weather-linked version. And it's about 3 miles from the project site. And these are the data for average rainfall over the last decade. If you looked at the average rainfall over 3 years, it's 12.65 inches. Over 5 years, it's just under 11 inches. And over 10 years, it's 8.84 inches. That is all significantly less than the 15 inches of rain that's in the local area management plan. It says, look, if you've got a lot that is smaller than 2.5 acres, and all these lots on this project are 2 acres max, you need to install a non-conventional
Chris, it appears you're frozen. So we're not hearing anything you're saying right now. Is that correct?
Where do you want me to go back to?
Okay, local area management plan, I believe.
Right.
Okay, so the local area management plan requires, if you've got less than 15 inches of rain a year and you're on a lot size of less than 2.5 acres, you have to put a non-conventional water treatment system in there, and those are $40,000 and above. So that's $3 million of what septics need to go into this project. I think it would also be the council's view, given that they supported a project that said that there weren't going to be septics, that if the developer wants to develop with septics, which is outside of the scope of what was proposed in 2007, that this would be a significant change. Each of those, the 1994 EIR says that about 70,000 gallons of effluent a day are going to be going into those septic tanks from those homes. The other issue I think that's germane to this is that phase one lies within the Santa Clara River Basin, and that's actually designated as an SEA, and it's number 23 by the Los Angeles County. So that's number one. There's a significant concern over entitlements. The next issue is the wastewater plant. Again, when you go back to the 2007 SEIR and read it, it seems to create a precondition that the wastewater treatment plant has to be built at the same time as phase one. And that's, again, referenced in this grading and construction program dialogue in the final bound version of the supplemental report. The Department of Regional Planning, the Department of Public Works, I've got this wrong, comments on the wastewater treatment plan are quite quite alarming, because remember, this was a conceptual description in the original EIR. And they basically said, look, we need an awful lot more information from you. We need to know what the equipment's going to do, what the tank, how big the tanks are going to be, where they're going to be laid out. And there's actually, if you look at the approval package on the county's website, condition number 16 from the DWP, it basically says, look, there's an incomplete and inadequate treatment plan feasibility study and treatment plan here. And you really need to acknowledge to us that those documents are deficient, and getting them right may necessitate a change to the environmental documents and a revision to the Tract Map. Now, I talked about Tract Maps before, and the Tract Map for Phase 2 of this project actually expires, as best as I can tell, in October 2022. I was able to come up with a supplemental agenda item from a 2015 planning meeting, where they were basically processing the final request extension to April 11th, 2021. So when you add the effect of AB 1561 in there, the Tract Map for Phase 2 will expire at the end of October, or around about October, 6 months out from now. And once the Tract Map expires, then that CUP that grants all these options to build Phase 1 without septics and build a wastewater treatment plant, that all goes away. And that's clearly spelled out in the approval package again. It's condition 12, which is on page 34 of the PDF. And no Phase 2 means no wastewater treatment plant without another EIR and all the various documents that the attorney identified to the Regional Water Quality Control Board back in February. The third issue is a water supply issue. And I have to disclaim this because I haven't been able to get the documents that will tell me one way or another whether this statement is positive or negative. But there's a sense that the District 37 may not be obliged to guarantee supply of the water to Phase 2. When you track back the municipal water program, I actually had to put my Madonna mixtape in the DeLorean and sort of fly back to 1989 for this, because the original agreement that brought municipal water into Acton was something called a master supply agreement, and it was between Acton Estates, the facility, the project that was being built, and then other partners and District 37. And I've underlined Waterworks Construction Company because that was owned by Fred Brown. And the master service agreement basically gave that group the ability to create sub-agreements so they could enter into agreements with other developers who were nearby, and that would create a supply of municipal water to those other developments. Now, when you take a big project like this on and bring water in and pumps and storage tanks, it's incredibly expensive. So what happens is a Melrose bond or a community facilities district is created. And essentially what that means, people who live down in Valencia and El Santa Clarita will understand this, that it adds a fee on your annual property tax bill that pays down this bond over typically 30 years. So a CFD was created so that the costs of this would be defrayed to the people who are benefiting from it. But the master service agreement has some conditions. If you want to get a will serve letter from the District 37, you just have to be within the boundaries of the community Melrose Bond District. But if you want a guarantee of water supply, you have to fall within what's called the Acton property. And that's described on Exhibit A of this agreement by a map. And I don't know whether this development that we're talking about now, the Aguadolci project, is within that Acton property map. The exhibits are missing from Appendix O of the final environmental report from 1994. And I have requested them from LA County, but I haven't got a copy of them yet. They should be on file at the Department of Public Works because that's the custodian of them. There's also, I think, a misconception that all this water is going to magically appear from elsewhere. and there's going to be absolutely no impact on our local groundwater basin from it. It looks like around about the time that this project first appeared in 1991, there'd been a drought. And there was concern expressed by people within the community, well, you know, what's going to happen to the groundwater? And there's a statement that's very clear in the final EIR, and it's in the response to comments section that I've given you the reference for there. And it says, look, due to an increased availability of state water project water, it's less likely, absent a drought, that the proposed project will use significant amounts of groundwater associated with the water system. Now, what we know now is that the state water project is basically cutting agencies like ABEC, the wholesaler for this water, back and not giving them allocations beyond what they need. So this notion that this project is going to use water that isn't going to come from Acton and Aguadolci is clearly incorrect. That comment that the water is coming from elsewhere was actually made by the Regional Water Quality Board staff in front of the board meeting on February 10th by Celine Gallon. She said, look, now it's coming from municipal. That's clearly not the case when you look at the EIR from 1994. And I think there was one very glaring omission for me when I read the information about the water treatment plant, and it describes something called reverse osmosis. And the one thing I know about reverse osmosis is you ingest, you know, 2 or 3 gallons of product, and then you spit 1 treated gallon of product out. And there's absolutely no consideration given anywhere in the environmental documents as to how much municipal water it's going to take to run that plant. So it's an awful lot of water that has to be produced that's going to go back to the groundwater table. And there's just no mention of that anywhere in the EIR. Obviously, the EIR is set, the SEIR is set, you can't go back and dispute it, but I hope the Department of Public Works will actually take a look at this at the point at which they get to look at the wastewater plant. The final concern is really geopolitical issues. There was some concern that RTG Investment, the developer that's listed, is a Wyoming registered LLC, and they don't seem to have much previous experience developing properties. I think that was a concern that was expressed at last month's meeting. If you look at the forms on state with the California Secretary
of Work, at this point, I'm thinking possibly the county may want to have a town hall meeting. Stephanie, what do you think? Because what we're seeing right now is we are getting no response back from the developer. We gave them a list of questions that the concerned community members had, and we have yet to see an answer come back. Mary has sent a letter out to that person every month before the meeting, and we have yet to see one answer come back. Is that correct, Mary?
That's correct. I missed February, but I sent something a week ago, and usually she'll at least reply, got it, we're working on it, but this one, the latest request that I sent, it was no response at all.
Okay, all right. So, Stephanie, what can I have your thoughts on this as far as a town hall or something that the county, because the county inevitably is going to need to give us answers that make sense. And at this point, it seems to me, from Chris's report, this particular development is full of holes. That may not be the case, but at this point, that's what it appears to be. So what can you suggest on the county level that can be done?
I think that certainly we would be open to a town hall. There's no problem with that. However, I think it would be most beneficial for us to be able to take Chris's presentation, and Chris, phenomenal job and a tremendous amount of time that you put into it. That's really, you should be commended for taking your time on behalf of the community to do that. But what I'd like to suggest, Dawn, is that you guys all write a letter summarizing the bullet point concerns, asking for a detailed response, and possibly a town hall. But give us a chance to work with the departments to look through the presentation and address those issues provided for in the presentation. And if you don't mind, let's go from there. And definitely
on the Santa Clara River Watershed Area Steering Committee, Measure W.
Yes.
If you want to hear the latest on that.
Okay.
You know, we had sent a letter asking that we wanted to have their meeting video recordings published on their website, and you saw what they sent back and said, no, we're not going to do that. You need to do public records for everyone. So what I'd like to do is to make a motion that we just make it a standing letter that we send, that we have a public records request for all their meetings.
Okay. So that basically, instead of having a blanket approval and acceptance, they want it month by month, it sounds like.
Month by month. That's the only way they'll do it.
Well, if you don't mind putting the stamp on it, I'll put my signature on the bottom if someone wants to make a motion to that effect, being that they kind of, we got a slap in the face from them. We did not get, you know, well, I don't want to go into it, but.
Yeah, and we actually, as a committee, discussed it at the meeting, and